Hello, thanks for tuning in for another edition of the issue review from this week in Haiti Liberté. I'm Joseph Mullen, and we're going to go straight into the headlines this week, as we do each week, breaking down the issue. And this week's issue is Volume 19, issue number 19, the beginning of November, from the 5th to the 11th of November 2025. So as you can see here, some tuning in may recognize that face, and that is the face of Zoran Mamdani. And as the headline says, une socialiste maire de la capitale du capitalisme, the newly elected mayor of New York City, the capital of capitalism. And the subtitle for the article, which we will take a deeper look at on page 4, New York est au seuil d'un schisme politique. Zoran Mamdani arrive à la mairie. So he will be going to City Hall here in New York City, and we will break down a little bit more the impact of his election on Haitians in New York City, on the Haitian diaspora, on New Yorkers in general, and of course particularly here in Brooklyn, the impact that will have, and maybe even how it will impact some global affairs, potentially in Haiti, potentially for Palestine, and for the world. Our next cover page article, Trois jours du deuil national, and this is in relation to the devastating Hurricane Melissa, which impacted the Caribbean this past week. And the subtitle tells us a bit more. Quelle démagogie de la part du gouvernement de déclarer 3 jours de deuil national à la mémoire des victimes de l'ouragan Melissa. Melissa, of course, impacting Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba, the Bahamas, and causing many casualties, particularly in Jamaica. So this article touches on the declaration of 3 days of mourning across the country in Haiti for the deceased of and the victims of that hurricane. So let's go into the editorial page from our director, Brittany Dupont. And for our editorial for the week, we have a discussion and analysis of the Organization of American States, in French, l'OEA, Ennemis ou Alliés, and the Organization of États Américains, or the Organization of American States, OAS. Great quote from this article, which I think we invoke quite often when talking about the OAS, and Dupont uses this quote from Fidel Castro, 1962, which is that Castro had baptized the OAS as the Ministry of Colonial Affairs for America. So this is also relating to the ongoing series by Catherine Charlemagne, which is touching on the planned map for elections, for the transition that the OAS has declared for Haiti, very much without the support of key nations in Latin America, such as Venezuela, Colombia, and several others, and Cuba, of course. So editorial touching on these pressing matters right now, particularly with Venezuela at the forefront of a lot of the challenge to U.S. Continued dominant hegemony over Latin America. And then with the 3 days of national mourning for Haiti, I will just take a look at some of the captions for the pictures and let you know a little bit more. And you can see these pictures. We have a picture of the Hurricane Melissa itself impacting there, blowing the trees with the wind, and just blowing up on the shore, causing a lot of devastation. So that's a picture. And then we have a picture of some damage, and the subtitle reads, C'est une négligence proprement criminelle qui règne toujours au sommet de l'appareil d'État haïtien. The irony and the perhaps a little bit of yeah, negligence, criminal negligence, as the caption says, from the part of the Haitian state to, on the one hand, be imposed, unelected, and illegitimate, and on the other hand, declare 3 days of national mourning, especially after having not contributed at all to the victims of a drone strike that they perpetrated, will now take credit for helping the victims and the grieving families of this hurricane. So again, there is a pronounced and tragic comedy of that situation with regards to the hurricane. And then we have a picture with respect to the victims, a picture of people transporting a body of a victim. So just a terrible situation all around, and the impacts being felt across the Caribbean. Next, continuing in À travers Haïti, we have one of our cover page articles, and this one, of course, about Zoran Mamdani, the new socialist mayor of New York, and we'll see. I mean, those of us here in New York will, of course, as New Yorkers do, be very opinionated about the future of his time in office and what will come of it. And again, particularly interested as we have this column on the side, Laissons pour la gauche, of, will this be a Salvador Allende situation? Will this be a popular uprising by the ballot? We'll see what happens in the next couple of years. And of course, the denunciations have come, but we will see what happens for Mamdani's social programs that he seeks to push in. But suffice it to say, in summary, that we're looking for a revolution. We're looking for mobilization of the proletariat, and until that occurs on a widespread mobilization beyond just the electoral stage. Lenin, of course, reminding us about the dual strategy that needs to be done, but so we're missing the other side of that dual strategy, and remains to be seen how that can work hand in hand with that growing mobilization really across and principally in the third world and global south nations. And on that note, we have an ad for a protest or generally mobilization, to fill in the blank, of protesting and demanding no war on Venezuela, no troops on our streets. This will be from November 15th to 23rd. There's a link there as well, an urgent call for a week of coordinated protests. Next, in our perspective section, we have an article about how we would say voodoo in pronounce with the English pronunciation, but Valdu?
Voodoo.
Voodoo. So it was Halloween this past week, and many people have perhaps a warped conception of voodoo or Valdu, and so this article is about as the headline reads, comprendre le Valdu, des siècles de préjugés occidentaux ont stigmatisé la religion de résistance haïtienne. So, a very interesting way of formulating it is a religion of resistance, and have a couple of pictures here, a really great artwork in the Haitian style of a ritual or ceremony. So this is a way to counter some of the negative stereotypes that have been enforced, particularly around practices and symbolism. And when you hear people saying, "Oh, that's black magic," for example, and witchcraft and whatnot, and they may be meaning that in a pejorative way. And this article comes to us by Shah Dafol and Rodrigo Durao Coelho, and from Brazil do Fato. So we have a Brazilian contribution on voodoo in Haiti. Next, we turn to our Chronique Creole, our Creole section. And continuing, we talk about Jed and Halloween, and they are de traditions différentes. So there are two different traditions that are similar, not exactly the same, but similar, kind of in the way. Gede, Gede, and we have a similarity in the way that people look at perhaps Dia de los Muertos, Halloween, other rituals around the changing of the seasons and the spirit world and these rituals that different cultures practice. This one coming from Haiti continues to discuss the impact of Valdu and the symbolism, as we can see with the artwork on the dress here. So very interesting for those who are interested in Haitian culture and practices to take a read. If you can translate from Creole, it takes only a little bit of time. Our next article, Élève lycée Jean-Marie Vincent, yo te prends la rue. This is a manifestation of students going on at the Lycée Jean-Marie Vincent, taking action, mobilizing. We had quite a few articles past couple of weeks on student protest, the Gen Z movement. So this article from Lenoir Absalom talking about the student protests that are going on and really how those play a role in the ongoing uprising and insurgent movement across Haiti. Next in our perspective section, this article, La Justice ou l'équilibre. This comes to us from Kervins Lusson, who is contributing excellent articles on political economy, the justice system, the bureaucracy. And we have a picture of la Cour de Cassation, the Supreme Court, for lack of a better analogy. There is also a protester with a sign, le dysfonctionnement du système judiciaire est un avantage pour les dirigeants corrompus. So, the justice system, which is very warped in America, of course, likewise under any bourgeois society, the class that holds state power will exercise that power, and they exercise it through the enforcement of legislation, legal codes, and even social norms and etiquette. So this article breaking down what really is justice under a bourgeois, colonized, and imperialist dominated society like in Haiti. From Catherine Charlemagne, the 31st part of Haiti d'une transition à l'autre, and this is the second part, because we had the first part last week, and so this is Haiti de l'abandon de la souveraineté à la fuite de route de l'OEA, the Organization of American States. So this continuing series about the OAS and the abandoning of sovereignty and the map or document that they're creating to really plan out the transition for Haiti, which is completely undemocratic because, again, to reiterate, you're having unelected bureaucrats and particularly international influence, which is manipulating the transition as opposed to allowing the people to decide what the transition should be. But if that can't happen in this system, then the people will take action independently. In our English section, we have for this week in Haiti 2 articles. The first from Kervin Louisant with a foreword by our English language editor Kim Ives is Impossible Elections and Official Gaslighting. There's been this saga ongoing of this so-called election which will take place, even though we have in the subtitle or caption for this picture the head of the Council of the Provisional Electoral Council, CEP President Jacques Desrosiers, who stated on October 31st that, quote, it is materially impossible to hold elections before February 7th. Interesting that they should admit that, considering that they are planning to have that election nevertheless, and have indeed promised to have that election, and that election will save the country from anarchy. So seems pretty unlikely that will occur. This article from Kervins talks a little bit more about really the tragicomedy of this whole electoral process, which Catherine Charlemagne in her articles is also in the from one transition to another has also broken down really in depth how money is coming in for the elections. No one is keeping tabs of who's getting access to this money. It's coming from the OAS. It's coming from, you know, these democratic rights NGOs and whatnot to have an election, which they are admitting that they physically cannot create even the pretense of security to have that election. So now money is flowing in for some election to occur, and some electoral work to be set up, which in the end is just another money laundering facade that will be installed. Next, on our English section from Moise Lena Jean-Louis, this Creole event, which we had an ad for in the past couple of weeks, which took place at Brooklyn College, promoting the Creole language and celebrating the musician Coupé Clouet. And it was a very well-attended event, had a lively discussion from the folks at the Haitian Studies Institute at BC. We have a couple of pictures there of the attendees and the discussion, and it always, each year, celebrating Creole culture and Haitian culture, this year with a musical theme. Now to our centerfold article. Les Palestiniens n'ont d'autre choix que d'être révolutionnaires. There is no other, or I can just quote from this graffiti here: to exist is to resist. There is no other choice but to have a revolution against the Israeli settler colonial entity, which has been set up, the Zionist entity. And article kind of having some themes that readers of Haiti Liberté may be familiar with, and hopefully those who are familiar with the long tradition of Palestinian resistance will know. And this article comes from Hayes Goriak, from Marie Schwab. Here, another picture with the kafia and the resistance anti-Zionist is Les Palestiniens n'ont pas choisi une vie d'occupation et d'oppression, mais puisque tel est leur destin, ils n'ont d'autre choix que de résister. So that summarizes it well, the need to resist against the Zionist entity. Next, an ongoing discussion and dilemma, really, which has been occurring because of the Trump administration and the bourgeoisie's inability to solve a capitalist crisis, of course, going to hit the SNAP benefit program and the those who are part of the working class and the proletariat in the United States. Le gel du programme SNAP démontre que la charité ne saurait remplacer l'aide sociale. Interesting headline talking about how one of the parts of neoliberal bourgeois society has been to replace the state with all kinds of private charities and Christian associations and whatnot, and of course in lieu of having a state which can provide for the people. And that's been a long dialectic which has been occurring between the New Deal, which Roosevelt pushed, and the neoliberalism that Thatcherism and whatnot. But even though the American empire is in decline and its death is occurring, and the global south is rising, this is one of the effects of that, the re-proletarianization perhaps of many of the workers in the imperial core and the global north. So it remains to be seen what the impact of that will be, if it'll end in more social democracy and social imperialism, or if there will be a world revolution against imperialism and capitalism. An article from Benin: Le prisonnier politique et militant Damien Degba dénonce les méthodes fascistes du gouvernement Talon. And this is a picture of the political prisoner Damien Degba, who the caption says, Degba avait informé Brésil de facto de la répression contre l'opposition 3 mois avant son arrestation. Il a été interpellé le 21 octobre. And another excellent article coming from Brazil Fato, or this from People's Dispatch with the help of Brazil de Fato, talking about the Communist Party of Benin and their activism against the comprador government there in Benin. In the section Droit du Mémoire, we have the begins with a quotation, the headline. Nous avions la Bible et ils avaient la terre. Comment l'Occident a pillé l'Afrique au nom de Christ, in the name of Christ. Picture of Leopold II, one of the incarnations of Satan in the last century. Another one of Colonel Maximilian Charles Ferdinand Strauss. And this article coming from Maxwell Boama Amofa, who is, it'll say a little bit more if you read the article about him. And this article talking particularly about the Congo and just the Holocaust which occurred in the Congo in the 19th century. An article comes to us from Zimbabwe in the perspective section. Zimbabwe, manifestation à Harare pour la levée du blocus économique américain contre Cuba. The solidarity of Zimbabwe and Cuba, which has existed since the 1960s when there was support for the liberation in Southern Africa, and now that support is being reciprocated from Zimbabwe and much of Southern Africa. Another article below, les dimensions de l'ambassadeur des États-Unis à l'ONU, Mike Waltz, sur le blocus cubain, démystifié. 10 lies that have been perpetrated by Mike Waltz about the blockade on Cuba, which was most recently, again, another vote in the UN to end that blockade. In the perspective section, le Rwanda de FPR, or RPF, néocolonial, n'est peut-être un modèle pour l'Afrique. Many people will say that Kigali is like Dubai or is
Kagame.
like... Sorry?
Kigami.
No, Kagame, the leader, but Kigali, the capital
Oh, okay.
of Rwanda, it is like a El Dorado or some kind of, paradise on earth that has been established and should be a model for development for much of the rest of Africa and also the third world. But in actuality, the article by Diagne Fode Roland exposes a little bit of the machinations that brought Paul Kagame to power, and the RPF, which is the political movement associated with the Tutsi in Rwanda, exposes a little bit about just how this was really part of the hegemony of the United States and the beginning of globalization. So very interesting how the U.S. manipulated the Rwanda crisis to their advantage and has used plenty of propaganda in media and TV, such as the movie Hotel Rwanda was a way that they spread a certain narrative about that. So that article about the Congo continues, and then in À travers le monde, États-Unis, les employés de Boeing en grève rejettent la dernière offre de l'entreprise. The strike by Boeing employees going on. Les États-Unis ont cherché à corrompre le pilote de Nicolas Maduro pour qu'il trahisse le dirigeant vénézuélien. Just as the US tried to do against Thomas Sankara, turn your best friend into your enemy, they're trying to turn the personal pilot of Nicolas Maduro into an informant and potentially use him in an assassination attempt, which is typical imperialist Machiavellian tactics. Les employés de Starbucks intensifiaient le lutte et vote sur la grève. The latest updates from Martha Gravatt from Workers' World on the protests taking place in voting for a union for the workers. Next, next in the continuing perspectives and à travers le monde, comment un ancien employé du club du golf de Donald Trump a été exposé à tort vers le Mexique, from aporia.org. It is, again, I think there's plenty of ironies. We started off with a cover page article, which is the contradiction between having a socialist mayor in the capital of capitalism. Now we have another ironic twist of fate visited upon a former employee of Donald Trump's golf course who has been deported to Mexico, and just tragicomedy, for lack of a better word, that these things happen, and they're, as Marx said, that history can repeat itself first as tragedy and then as farce. And we've had plenty of instantiations of that throughout this article, with the hurricane and the memorial services being promised to the victims by an illegitimate government, Zoran's election, and now another example. And a last example to cap that off. Les États-Unis révoquent le visa de Wole Soyinka, premier Africain à recevoir le prix Nobel de littérature. That's ironic because Wole Soyinka will be taught in many American universities in a course on African literature, for example. His works will be taught alongside Chinua Achebe, yet the government of the United States will revoke his visa and not allow him to enter the country. And interesting too that one of the debates that was occurring amongst that group of literary figures was whether to use English in their literature of non. Of course, you had Ngugi wa Thiong'o from Kenya, who argued English and other colonial languages should not be used in African literature. Wole Soyinka, Chinua Achebe, all joining in that debate, and now seeing the kind of the aftermath of that the state and the colonial regimes will never really accept even though they will co-opt and utilize literature and say, oh, we have this class you can take on, diverse global thought or whatever, that at the same time these repressions still occur. That's all for this week, and another edition of the Issue Review, and hope you join us, tune in again next week. Thanks. Take care.